Services team currently offers, but it's also more broad in that it may take a little longer to get an appointment, or if you have a very specialized question, they might actually end up sending you to the iSchool Career Services team. So just telling you what's available out there, but you can use it however you would like. So, I already mentioned who our guests are. If you have questions following up to this, please contact icareers@uw, and Julie will kindly help either via email or in person through an appointment, whatever you prefer. And so I thought a few conversation starters for us to kick off the discussion. These are a few that I heard a few trends of here and there. So we'll start off with these, and then as I shared in the Canvas announcement, today we're going to do things a little differently and break into smaller groups. Now that the group is about half the size as what we typically see, it will be like pairs. So everyone will be forced to participate, I guess. Yeah, so what are the most common jobs informatics students do when they graduate? Does anyone know where to find this information? Yeah?
There's like a poster, like a little infographic that they have.
Yes, there is. Here's the infographic. So you might have seen the physical, So you might have seen the physical copy of the Square infographic if you've been to MGH 420. An e-version of this infographic is also available on our website. There's the URL if you would like access to it. So this is 2018 data. So you can see that for informatics, the most popular job title is like a software engineer or software developer, followed by analysts like business analysts, security analysts, technology analysts, consultants, designers. So these are like UI, UX people. And then PMs like product managers, program managers, project managers, and then other. This is not meant to funnel you in any direction whatsoever. But because we do get this question often, we have these kind of data points. You should do what you want to do, regardless of what other people have done in the past. But if you're really lost as to like where to get started, these are starting points, right? So I've talked to a lot of informatics students who, thought they really wanted to be X. They did an internship in X, and then afterwards they're like, I don't know, right? And then for their full-time search, they decide, oh, maybe I'll try for Y. Right? And those are just as valuable as trying X and realizing, oh my gosh, X is exactly what I thought it would be and exactly what I want to do after I graduate. Right? So to put more like, I guess, specifics to this kind of situation, for example, an informatics student would have interned as a software engineer, and they come back and they talk to a career advisor and they're like, yeah, I don't know, like it just wasn't what I was expecting. And I dig around, like, what do you mean it wasn't what you were expecting? And then a lot of these conversations end up with like, well, like I don't really want to spend like every day just coding. I like coding, but I also like people. I also like teamwork. I also like collaborating, right? So they would say something like, an extreme way to say this is like, oh, I don't want to be a code monkey. I like to code. I like the technical foundations, but I want to be doing more interpersonal things too, right? And then we talk about like, oh, what other jobs have their technical requirements, but also have more interpersonal requirements, right? So that's when we kind of zoom out like that. So there's the answer to the first question. What are some good websites or platforms to look for jobs on? Can I get a show of hands of how many have logged into Handshake? Great. How many have logged into iCareers? Awesome. So those are two great places to start. If you run out beyond those, then there are many more things that you can look into, which are on that link, right? There's a long list of like portals you can check and whatnot on the right side corner, but Handshake and iCareers are great starting points. And then there was also another question in the beginning of when is recruiting season for both jobs and internships? And that's why we're going to go back to that exact same slide that I just showed. So if you are a visual person or like to plan with timelines in mind, this is just an approximation. And then if you click on that link, and a link to this document is available on that URL, you'll see what to expect for January to June as well, right? But in short, recruiting happens all year. Some companies front load recruiting to the fall. Some companies, they do it more in like January, February, March. When we look at the data, right? And data usually doesn't lie. When we look at the data, like we've surveyed iSchool students and asked, like, when did you receive your offer for your internship? The most common point is actually, I think, May. It's actually far later than what you think. You think everyone got their offer in October, right? That's because those are the only people that are talking about it. The people who've applied and are processing and have not yet accepted the offer, they're not talking about that, right? So don't let what you hear give you false conceptions of like what reality actually is. For many of the roles that informatics students are interested in, employers are hiring year round. So it's never too late. Like literally we have students who get offers in early June and they start in late June, right? You can of course start earlier. You might find something that is a good fit for you before then, but in no way is it too late, right? There's no too late. Okay, I think those are most of the starters that are on the slide. Are there any follow-up questions before we break out into groups? Okay, cool. So we have 10 people in the room, I believe, and we have 5 sets of questions. So please pair off with one other person in the room. And if the person next to you is not engaged at the moment, you're welcome to nudge them or poke them or do whatever you need to get their attention. So 5 groups, 5 minutes. Each group will get a set of questions. And I want you to just talk about these questions with your partner and see what you can come. You're not expected to have full comprehensive answers to all of them, but I think actually like, you know, the answers to some of these. So as you pair off, you can pair off, like I'm not gonna like assign you pairs, you're adults, right? But I would say it might be advantageous to you to pair off with someone that's maybe a little different, because then they might be able to know, they might know the answers that you don't know, right? So I will leave these 5 questions up here. Y'all can just come and grab a question. So for 5 minutes, just discuss with your pair. And then we'll regroup and we'll report out, what we found. And if you want to preview, here are the 5 sets of questions.
How do you find jobs or internships?
I'll trade with you.
Set a timer for 5 minutes.
I work for the city. I work for the city cutting butterflies.
Oh my gosh.
Pause for a second.
Great, this is perfect for me.
Unemployable.
I think you can get away with 142.
All right. So what we'll do is we'll have all the groups report out what you were able to answer so far. And then Julia and I will fill in any holes or things that you weren't able to discuss among yourselves. So we'll start with group 1, then just go down the line to group 5. Yeah, you're group 1?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Tell us.
All right. So this first question is, how do you find jobs or internships that best suit you? We thought that, like how you had mentioned up here at this before, you try out like things and see if you like them, right? And that'll, if you can't tell whether you like something before you apply for it, really the only way is to try it out, This one says, does having internship experience higher your chance of getting a job compared to not having internship experience? And we thought that, I think a lot of companies like hire their interns, which could help. So certainly in that way, and also like, it's good for building your resume, showing you've done stuff. So I'd say yes to that question. And this question is the same as the first one, basically. And then this one says, is it considered late if you intern the summer of your junior year? I don't think so. That's my plan. Is it late? Yeah. What internships are available for freshmen? How can we find an internship with so little experience in class and classes in our belt? I think Kelly can cover this one.
I know it's pretty hard to get internships as a freshman, because I mean, like, obviously you want more experienced people who know more. But I mean, like, I don't think it's unheard of, so somewhere out there it happens. And then what internships are available? Apply for late fall, winter 2020, probably, which one gets that?
Popcorn me?
Yes.
Late fall, winter 2020.
That's right now.
Yeah. Well, I said, recruiting happens year round, right? So it's really, so if you want me to be more specific, check Handshake and iCareers for the specifics of what internships are still available, right? But really, recruiters are recruiting year round. So yeah, check Handshake and iCareers.
Mhm.
And then last question, check Handshake.
Mm-hmm.
We will know.
Good job. Julie, do you have anything to add for the slide?
Yeah, for what internships are available, just this week we had Cisco and Security Innovation come in and they're like, yeah, we're looking for interns. So coming to the recruitment events is a really great opportunity as well to know what internships are available. And those recruitment events are usually like spearheaded by alumni. And so like they've already put in a good word about you because you're affiliated with the high school. So they are already targeting you. And so that's like a surefire, like available internships thing to go for. And then, yeah, you guys, good thinking.
Yeah, that was great.
Good thought process happening here.
Yeah. If I were to add and emphasize what Julie just said, all the people who come to the iSchool, the iLounge, and host iSchool specific events at like the Hub, for example, they really are people who are very, very specifically targeting iSchool students and not just the broad UW population. So if you don't know where to start, those employers are a great place to start because you already won their heart with your affiliation, right? If you go to a UW-wide event, like a UW-wide career fair, sometimes you have to do educating of like what is informatics, which is why we prepare you to share that. And sometimes you have to do that at the iSchool specific events as well because they bring multiple representatives. Not everyone is aware, but I would say that's a lower bar than other things. So that's a great place to start. We'll go to group 2.
Okay, so basically, most of the questions are just how you prepare for the interview. So you do that by doing practice, preferably with someone who already has some sort of experience interviewing for a job of some sort. But if you can't do that, then just do it with a friend or mentor or someone who can. Okay.
Wait, do you know where you could find people who have experience with interviewing?
Isn't there like a career thing in Mary Gates?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a few career things in Mary Gates. Julie, do you help with interviews?
I guess I do.
She does. So if you want to do like a mock interview, so like doing a mock interview is really, okay, there are a lot of things that I enjoyed about being a career advisor. And there's some things that I enjoyed less. But one of the things I enjoyed a lot was doing mock interviews. Because you learn so much about people from like doing a 30-minute mock interview. That's a resource that you have at the iSchool and at the main Career and Internship Center. Free of charge to you. free of charge just means you're paying for it with your tuition and fees, right? But once you graduate, you have to pay for that. So I would say the best way to prepare is practice, and practicing before you actually have an interview coming up. Because what typically happens with interviews is employers contact you on Monday and say, can we set up an interview for Thursday or Friday? That's a very short window, right? So if you can be prepared before then, of like, how will you articulate your interests, your strengths, your skills? Really helpful. Please continue.
Okay. For specific companies, check handshake. Yeah. What would technical interviews entail? Probably basic coding or logic questions, just to see how you think and approach problems. Let's see. Okay, what do companies look for? So they look for ability to learn and ability to cooperate. Okay.
Do you want to add to any of these
Yeah,
questions?
I think when thinking about interviews, it's one way I like to look at it is thinking about it from the perspective of an employer. It's like, they're looking for someone who they think would be a good fit for their team, is not too weird, socially competent, easy to get along with, that they think that, they know how to explain problems, come up with solutions, get along with people without conflicts can happen, but what they're really looking for is that you have a set process in your mind that won't destroy the entire company or the team. But that's a really helpful way to look at interviews is how can I present myself in a way that I would be appealing to someone who is looking to add someone to their team.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that connects with some of our earlier classes about like empathy and the relational skills that you build when you participate in things outside the classrooms. Right? A lot of communication, a lot of interviewing is just like communicating in a way that the other person wants to hear. And that if you have more opportunities to practice it, it will get a little easier. I want to add to the technical interview question.
That's your bread and butter.
Yeah, it is my bread and butter because of my current employer. So technical interviews, if you're looking for coursework that will prepare you for like software engineering interviews, I've heard that the CSE class data structures and algorithms is probably one of the most helpful ones, and that reviewing the content from that class will often help with technical interviewing questions. I also have a handout of things that my company advises for the companies for the technical interviews that we do. So we do technical interviews for companies like Pinterest, Intuit, Robinhood, Wayfair, Citrix, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the tips that we give to candidates as they prepare for their technical screen. So if it's helpful for you, it's just free advice. Take it as you'd like. And then resources for learning interviewing skills. If you like to like read things before you try it, the Career and Internship Center has some great guides on how to think about telling your story in an interview. So you might have heard of things like the STAR framework, which is a simple way to position responding to behavioral interview questions, behavioral or situational interview questions. So if you got asked a question like, tell me about a time that you failed, right? How to share that in a concise, like 2 to 3 minute response that focuses on the situation, the task, the actions that you took, and then the result at the end, or the learnings. So those are great things to reference as well for interviewing guides. Shall we go to group 3?
So the first question is, do you have any advice when meeting recruiters, applying for internships, and succeeding in behavioral and technical interviews? I guess when you're talking to the recruiters, make yourself memorable, so that, you know, when they read over your resume after going back to the office, they remember you, and they have like a first person understanding of who you actually are. I guess succeeding in behavioral interviews, just like practicing what to say, what not to say as well. And then for technical interviews, doing lead code, HackerRank, code, how to make connections with recruiters outside of job fairs. There's a lot of Facebook groups where people just find emails with technical recruiters. You also like cold message them on LinkedIn, but they probably get a lot of that, so they might not even see it. Best way to network, I guess that goes back to making yourself memorable, being confident, at least pretending you're confident even if you're not. Just that first impression is really important. How helpful are cover letters? I guess that would be something good to ask if you're like at a career fair. How helpful would a cover letter be? I also feel like when you're applying for the internships, if the cover letter is marked as required, then you know it's going to be more important. If it's not required, then not necessarily as important. How helpful are referrals? I'm actually not very sure on that one. I guess that could be something a little bit more.
Cool.
How helpful would it be if like the VP is referring? I'm guessing it's more helpful, especially if they work in the same area that you're like applying to for your job. So like if I'm applying for software engineering and a VP of engineering refers me, that'll be better.
You have any
Cool.
thoughts?
Yeah, I would say for the referrals question, kind of going back, well, I think one way to look at it is that they're looking for how the way employers are kind of approaching it, right? Like ideally they could just hire within their own ecosystem because this person already knows their company, knows how the processes work, and they're just like amazing because they're already in. For referrals, it's really helpful but like, you know, if you're in an ecosystem, you need like other people to enter in, and referrals are helpful because usually that initial screening process is kind of already done by whoever is referring you, even if it's just like an entry level software engineer, because they've already at least hopefully communicated to you like, this is what you'll be doing at this company, this is what the company is like, and they've already seen what kind of person you are, and so they can communicate that and be like, hey, this person seems pretty promising, pretty normal. I don't think it will cause a disaster. Let's give them an internship to see if like they're a good fit. And so it's really helpful actually.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times referrals might get you the interview, but it usually doesn't carry further than that, right? So for example, like if you look at the Google Careers website and how many people you think apply to like the entry-level software engineer role, they get thousands of applicants, probably every day. There's no way that their staff can review that many applicants. So if any of those applicants came with an advocacy from an employee, they might get prioritized, right, for an interview. But once you get the interview, it's really just based on your performance, right? But here's an example. I just saw this post this morning. It's from my friend who works at Google in New York, right? I haven't talked to him in like years, but he posted on Facebook. He said, once again, I'm reading it verbatim. Once again, I suddenly have intern headcount available on a short notice, this time for a full stack web development role for internal tooling around 3D and visual effects. Knowledge in a modern application framework like React, Angular, Vue, and an eye and passion for product design is required. Knowledge of linear algebra and 3D graphics is a plus. Location is downtown New York City. Start date needs to be before December 31st. Otherwise, I can't fit it into 2019 budget. Let me know if you have any leads. Right? When you look at like when Google hires, it was for interns, right? Yeah, they start that process in September, but a place like Google and a place like many organizations, they hire across the board. Some happens in a very centralized way. Some happens in a more ad hoc way, like this guy. Right? Like he didn't really plan to hire an intern, but he realized he has excess budget that he has to use before December 31st. So he's really looking for an intern right now. So he posted this a few months ago as well. And I was like, hey, are you open to UW iSchool students? Because I was still working there. So I sent him like a bunch of resumes, right? And he messaged me this week saying like, hey, sorry for the delay. That thing didn't work out, but I did like one of the resumes that you sent me. So I got in touch with them for this. And I was like, awesome, right? So like, I mean, I sent them all the interested profiles, but in the end, like the decision is the hiring managers, right? So, I mean, I didn't really like look that closely at the 10 so resumes, right? I just sent it along, or I just sent along his email address to people who pinged me from the IUGA post that I posted several months ago, right? So it's really merit-based in that way, but sometimes a referral can help you get the attention of the recruiter or the hiring manager for the first screen.
Yeah, and adding on to the whole grabbing their attention, especially when you're at a career fair and talking to a recruiter. Like I have a friend who was like he worked as a server for like 5+ years, and he's like studying computer science, and then the company was like, oh, so you've been like a server, that must mean you're good at talking to people, why don't you apply for the consulting position we have open. So it's really important when you're with your recruiter, you have your resume, and then like that's a really good conversation starter as well, and making a great impression that really can take you quite a long way.
Yeah. Let's go to group 4.
Okay, so should you take a broad variety of courses to focus on a single topic? I think you should probably do a combination of both, like start out with like freshman and sophomore, taking a variety. But it's just, you start to get like more of an interest in some topics, you can start focusing on them more, getting more experience in them. And then you'll even see in jobs, like there's some just like software engineer, so then there's also like cybersecurity internships. So that will prepare you, like if you were both engineering and cybersecurity, you have the skill sets to apply for both of them. And then for what does being a project manager look like? I think like there's a blog on Microsoft that says what the 3 aspects of like PM is, and they say it's technical understanding, design, and management, product development life cycle. So they're like PMs are going through like all the aspects of like creating a product, from like ideation, user interviews, to assigning tasks to the developers. The developers go and code and actually create the solution, and then they release it and follow it once it's been released. That's the most of it. What a PM is. And can you be a UX UI designer without artistic abilities? Yes, because it's more than just art. It's creating experiences that are easy for the user to use and following specific already established design principles that don't take artistic talent. Like you can still be artistic and being a UX and UI designer, but it's definitely not a requirement. And then should we limit our search to only cities that branch out? I think you can do whatever like is more comfortable for you. Like a lot of like, let's say you live in the Midwest and you're studying computer science, you have to apply to internships outside of your city or state because there's no opportunities where you are. Like since we live in Seattle, we're kind of lucky because we're in a tech hub, so we have access to a lot of internships that don't require us to move. But if you want more opportunities, you should apply to them all across the country so that you have more opportunities to have an internship. So like if you're comfortable living someplace else, you should, but if you just want to stay here, then you can do that as well. And finally, where do I need to get in terms of programming and technical skills to get an internship? I think that varies by position because like maybe I know that for some freshman and sophomore level internships, they only require like an introduction to a programming class. But then they actually, because they have so many people applying to this, when you get into the interview, they're asking like you how to sort arrays, like something you can learn in the introductory class. So I was saying in general, you might want to take at least CSE 142 to prepare for like a freshman and sophomore level internship. But by the time you get into like a junior and senior year, applying for higher level internships and full-time jobs, definitely no CSC considered great.
Cool. Any follow-up questions from the class?
I have a question about the high school career fair, and like, I think it's February, right?
Yeah, February.
What, do you know what companies are going to be there?
Yeah, that's a great worry. I have like a list, but I don't really have it off like the top of my head. A lot of the companies are ones that you kind of see if you go to like the career fairs in fall. They come back again in February. February is a great time for companies and employers to be hiring because new budgets have started. Suddenly, like there's they suddenly have money. Well, not they suddenly have money, but but they can actually plan out to open some positions and internships. So for the list of companies, I mean, like I could try to remember, but we can like post. We usually post that like before and we have like an app during the career fair that has the list of the companies and what positions they're hiring for and like more information on what you can find there. So definitely, it's not like I'll find out when I get there.
Second question, is it only open to high school students, or is it kind of like the CS career fair where it's open to College of Engineering and it opens up for the last like 2 hours?
Yeah, it's exactly like that. So the first 2 hours are for high school students only. So like current high school students, like this doesn't include alumni or info minors, just like current high school students is for the first 2 hours. And then the last 2 hours, we like, open up the floodgates and then like anyone from like any of the 3 campuses can come. Yeah, great question.
Cool, thank you.
Shall we go to group 5?
Yeah, so what are some ways for a freshman to build tech-related experience in order to apply for internships? You said general like tech-related classes and classes that'll help build those areas of knowledge. What entry-level jobs could a freshman do? Internships, I think you said. I don't know a whole lot. What is the feasibility of doing an internship with friends? That was my question, so I don't know.
Does anyone have a suggested answer to that?
Unlikely, because you could you and your friend could both apply to an internship at Google, but let's say you already have some experience and you like your resume more, you'll go forward and they won't. So I think in very rare circumstances, yes, but I think you kind of make most of your friends at the internship. Like maybe, but unlikely.
I think it's possible at startups or more likely than companies, or if some startups, they don't have like standard hiring processes, like you just cold email them and they're like, sure. So if you and your friend do that, then it could work out really higher rates.
With things like an internship, the amount of hours have significance, so the more hours, the better. We said, yeah, pretty much. It also depends on the internship, but I'd say the more hours, like obviously the more experience you're getting. How much time do jobs or internships take up? Again, it depends on what internship or job, but I'd say they take up quite a good amount of time. How often do students get job offers from the companies they interned at? From the people that I know personally, I'd say pretty often that the companies they intern for, they get job offers from them.
Yeah. So for that last part, there are students who get job offers from companies they interned at, and they decide not to take it. Because the internship is essentially just a long interview. So the employer felt like the student was a good fit, so they extended an offer. If the student felt like it wasn't a good fit, they could decline the offer. We have students who do that. And it's good, right? I mean, I'm not saying like rejecting offers is good, right? But I'm saying you have choice. You don't have to take the first offer you get. Right? And I'm not saying that in like an entitlement kind of way. I just remind students of that, especially when, they've been applying to 50 plus things, have not gotten a single offer, right? Like I remind them, like, really, like, you don't have to take the first offer you get. You're looking for the first offer that you feel like is a good fit for you. And if you've interned somewhere and you know that it wasn't a good fit for you, that's a pretty strong data point, I would say. Yeah. So it happens more often at companies where they have predictable budget. It doesn't have, and from a macro level, that's not every company. Yeah, but it happens. Are there any other questions? We have about 5 minutes left here. Are there any questions on this? Oh, sorry, the slide didn't change. Are there any questions on this slide that you would like Julie or I to answer before we wrap up for the day? No, are we good? Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Could you actually touch on the second question up there? Any advice?
Any advice for us to focus on before we prepare to enter the workforce? So much advice. Let me try to offer advice that I have not said already. So I asked that question when I was a senior in college. I asked that question to a lot of people as I was building relationships with professionals who worked at companies that I aspired to work at. And I remember one response from a contact stood out to me. I asked them like, hey, like, do you have any advice for me? Like, I'm in my senior year. I want to be in your shoes one day. And he said, Nayoung, like, when you're a student, you don't have a lot of money, but you do have time. When you're working, you have more money, but you don't have time. So this person said, my advice to you is when you're a student or right before you enter the workforce, go and do whatever the heck you wanted to do. Because once you start working, you will never have as much time as you had when you're a student, right? So my interpretation of that was like, my interpretation for me, like I love to travel, but traveling takes time and takes money, right? So for me, I just made a mental note. Okay, so if I want to travel, it's good to travel earlier in my life. And if I don't have money to travel, I should borrow that money from people and pay them back once I start making money. I took that to heart, right? So what I tell a lot of seniors is like, okay, you're graduating in June. Try not to start your job that month. Take a break for however long you need. Most employers understand that like once you graduate from a degree, like you are in need of a break. So like I would say up to a month is like no problem. The only pushback you might get is like if they intended to start all the new hires on the same day, right? But most employers are very understanding of that. So for me, like I graduated in May and then I asked my employer like, can I start in like August? And they're like, okay. It's like, oh, awesome. Right. So I didn't have any income for the 3 months, but I was like, I'm never going to be able to take vacation like this. Most employers have limited vacation policies. Nowadays, like a lot of newer players, like startup, like for example, Carrot has an unlimited vacation policy, right? So I love it. But like, you know, truth is like, there's too much work for me to go on vacation unlimited, right? So yeah, that's my advice. Maybe Julie has a different point of advice.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just depends. I mean, I hear you on the travel thing. I traveled for 2 years, kind of, so I totally sympathize with that sentiment. I think it really does depend on what you're most concerned about, honestly. Because if money is tight, it's hard to enjoy things. I get that. So definitely, I would love to talk to, if you're really worried about advice on what to focus on, I really encourage you to sort of speak with an advisor and me one-on-one.
Yeah. Any other final questions before we wrap up for the day? today is our second to last class, so there's only one class left. Next Friday, we're not meeting because it's Thanksgiving holiday, and why would I ruin your Thanksgiving holiday with forcing class? But the week after, December 6th, I believe, is our last class of the quarter. We'll have two guests who are direct admits of the past to help share about their experiences. And then because it is our last class of the quarter, I will also field any questions that are outstanding. So it doesn't have to be relevant to the direct admits, or it could just be anything, really. So that will be our last class. Y'all know the drill about the assignments and deadlines, but you have one extra week to do that this week because of no class next week. Cool.
I think I know the answer to this, but just to double check, on my it says that there's like a 2-hour block, I think on like the Tuesday of finals week for a final for this class.
There is no final for this class. Isn't that such a relief? I think they asked, like, do you want a final? I was like, no. Who wants a final? Students don't want a final. The instructor doesn't want to grade finals. No, there's no final. Yeah. And you don't have to show up. I don't know what that block is for. Yeah. Thank you for asking.